The sound of a porcelain cup hitting the floor shattered the silence like breaking glass. Inside the glass atrium of Horizon Grove Resort, morning light streamed through the wide doors, gleaming off the marble floor and the polished black shoes of Richard Cole. He spun around, his voice sharp as a blade. "Get her out of here! I don't want my guests seeing that." The white towel slipped from Maya Jefferson's hand and landed on the wet floor. The air froze. A group of men in suits entered, led by Liang Chen, his face calm and unreadable, like still water. Maya bent down to pick up the towel. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes told a different story. Calm, deep, impossible to read. For a few seconds, the only sound was Chen's footsteps echoing across the marble. He glanced at Maya, just a passing look, but it was enough to make Richard pause, his fingers tightening around the mic clipped to his collar, a silence heavy enough to press the air flat. No one knew that the woman just cast aside was about to make the entire room fall silent once more. Soft morning light filtered through the window of the presidential suite, coating the room in a faint golden glow. Pale blue rubber gloves moved with quiet precision as Maya Jefferson knelt beside the bed, smoothing each corner of the blanket as if every fold were a silent prayer for perfection. On her cart, among bottles of cleaner and folded towels, lay a worn International Finance magazine, tucked between two crisp white bath sheets. Every so often, Maya paused, flipped to a bookmarked page, and skimmed a few handwritten notes in careful Mandarin. The blue ink still fresh. The hum of a vacuum came from the next room. She switched on a small oil diffuser, filling the air with white tea and jasmine, the scent she always chose for Asian guests. "Keep it out of direct sunlight," she whispered in Mandarin, then smiled softly as if steadying her own heart. A thin silver bracelet glimmered on her wrist. It was a gift from her mother before Maya left for Singapore, the only piece of an unfinished dream she still carried. Her fingers brushed it lightly, seeking the warmth of memory. From the hallway, Richard Cole's voice echoed through the intercom. "All departments prepare to receive the International Investment Group. Housekeeping must clear the main lobby within 30 minutes. Maya looked up, squinting at the clock. 9:30 a.m. Under the cold white light, her breath caught. What seemed like an ordinary day suddenly felt heavy, with something she couldn't yet name. The click of polished shoes echoed across the marble floor, steady and commanding. Light from the glass ceiling danced along the white columns, and every corner of Horizon Grove Resort seemed poised for a flawless performance. Richard Cole, dressed in a freshly pressed gray suit, stood at the center of the lobby with his hands clasped behind his back, scanning the staff like a director inspecting his cast. "No mistakes," he said, his low voice carrying far enough for even those at a distance to hear. Outside, a line of sleek black cars rolled to a stop. Liang Chen's delegation had arrived. The staff stood in perfect formation, bowing in unison as the car doors opened. The slow roll of tires on tile echoed like a drumbeat. Then Liang stepped out, tall, composed, his dark suit immaculate, eyes cool and sharp behind thin glasses. Richard approached, wearing the carefully practiced smile he'd spent a week perfecting. "Welcome to Horizon Grove, the second home of distinguished guests like you," Liang replied in quick, fluent Mandarin. Richard froze for half a second, then forced a chuckle. "Ah, yes, of course." He pulled out his phone, opened a translation app, and let it speak. "Hello, iHotel is proud of money-meeting chicken tax policy." Silence. Then a soft snicker from one of Liang's team spread like ink across water. Richard's face flushed red, though his smile stayed fixed. "Sorry, bad signal today." A female assistant stepped forward, her voice a blend of English and Mandarin. "Mr. Chen says he prefers to speak directly in Mandarin. He doesn't like artificial technology." From the front desk, a few staff members bowed their heads, hiding uneasy smiles. Several guests paused, watching the scene unfold. Public embarrassment filling the air like static. "All right, I'll get someone from translation," Richard said sharply. He turned to a nearby staff member. "Find someone who speaks Mandarin now." The woman hesitated. "Sir, the interpreter's on vacation." The room froze again. Liang exchanged a brief word with his assistant, then gave a slight nod. His polite smile was gone. Across the lobby, Maya Jefferson, pushing a cleaning cart, stopped at the sound of Mandarin. Her eyes flickered as she understood every word. She saw Richard dab sweat from his forehead, saw the smug looks passing among a few younger staff, and she knew. What crushed him wasn't just a mistranslation. It was losing face before someone he wanted to impress. Then came a sharp crash, the sound of glass breaking. A guest gasped and stepped back. All eyes turned toward Maya, who had accidentally dropped a glass while mopping. Richard spun around. "What do you think you're doing?" "I'm sorry, I clean up after they leave." "I've said that already." His voice lashed through the silence. The air grew heavier. Liang glanced at Maya, head tilted slightly, a trace of curiosity in his eyes. Maya bent down to pick up the shards. Her hand trembled, the edge of one piece cutting her fingertip. A bead of blood blooming red. A security guard stepped forward to help, but Richard raised a hand. "No, let her do it. She needs to remember." Whispers rippled through the staff. "She's in trouble again. Talked back to him last time. Mr. Cole hates people who don't follow orders." Among the murmurs, a young receptionist discreetly lifted his phone to record, hoping to share the embarrassing moment in the staff chat. But his camera caught something else. Maya's eyes. Calm, steady, unafraid. The moment hung suspended. Richard bowed to Liang again, trying to patch the atmosphere with polite English. Behind him, Maya stood silently in the sunlight, the silver bracelet on her wrist catching the light. Blood from her fingertip touched the metal, leaving a faint red mark. Time slowed. A powerful man forcing a smile, a quiet woman bowing her head. Above them, the old lobby clock struck 10. Maya knew destiny had just spoken. The grand conference room of Horizon Grove Resort gleamed under the ceiling lights, their glow bouncing off the polished walnut table. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows stretched the misty green forests of Portland. On the large presentation screen, the title read, "Investment Proposal, Global Expansion." Richard Cole stood at the center, remote in hand, his confident smile as practiced as a mask worn too long. Across from him, Liang Chen sat upright, fingers interlaced, flanked by 6 associates and his bilingual assistant, Lin Yue. The atmosphere was elegant, yet tight as a drawn string. Richard began, "We're proud to introduce Horizon Grove, the leading sustainable resort in the United States." Lin Yue translated smoothly into Mandarin, but Liang's brow furrowed. He spoke in a low, rapid tone. Richard didn't understand a word. He only saw the assistant bow her head slightly before softening her message. "Mr. Chen is asking about foreign investment policy, particularly tax regulations." "Ah, yes, I'll explain," Richard replied, clicking to the next slide. But Liang continued speaking, longer this time. Lin Yue hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "He's asking whether Portland's government has recently changed its commercial zoning laws." Richard froze. The question was too specific, far beyond what he'd prepared. "Well, we're currently coordinating with legal advisors," he said, then grabbed his phone, pressed the translation app close to his mouth. "Could you repeat that, please?" The speaker crackled. "Foreign Moon Hotel Chicken Tree Policy." A ripple of laughter spread from the back row. Lin Yue kept her face neutral. Liang set down his teacup. The soft clink felt like ice breaking. "It seems this hotel isn't quite ready for international discussion." Her English translation was even, but the blade underneath was sharp. One of Chen's men discreetly lifted his phone to record. The reflection of the camera light caught Richard's flushed face. At the far end of the room, a few Horizon staff exchanged glances, texting each other. "The boss is crashing hard." Out in the hallway, Maya was replacing a trash bag when bits of conversation slipped through the door crack. She saw Richard unraveling, his voice strained, his words tangled like knotted rope. Lin Yue, the supposed bridge, was twisting every translation, cutting parts that favored Horizon and making Richard sound foolish. Maya understood it all. She'd studied the language herself. Inside, Richard forced another smile, his knuckles white around the remote. His finance director, David, rose to help. "Maybe we should pause and prepare an accurate translation." Liang glanced at his platinum watch. 5 minutes, then we leave." Richard stormed out, shoving the door so hard it nearly knocked down the "meeting in progress" sign. "Get the language team. Anyone who speaks Mandarin," he barked. "No one's available, sir," the secretary stammered. David checked his watch. If Chen walks out, the $200 million deal is gone. I know, Richard shouted. Nearby employees gathered, whispering. One of them opened the staff chat. A video was already circulating of Richard arguing with the translator app, his face distorted by stress. Laughing emojis filled the screen. The young woman fumbled to delete it, but it was too late. Management had already seen. Everyone knows now, someone murmured. Down the hall, Maya gripped the handle of her mop. As Lin Yue passed by, a folded note slipped from her pocket. Maya bent to pick it up. Neat Mandarin characters ran across the page. Don't help them. They're too arrogant to listen. Her hand trembled. Inside the room, Liang's quiet, clipped laugh carried through the glass. Cold, deliberate. Maya lifted her head toward the transparent wall. Through the reflection, she saw Richard still talking, desperation etched across his face. The hallway light glinted on her skin. The first spark of a decision forming. Behind her, her phone buzzed. A message from a technician friend, the only one who ever spoke to her kindly. You heard? The whole meeting's being recorded. If he fails, they'll start cutting jobs. Maya looked at the screen, then toward the half-open door, where the sound of Mandarin still poured out. Inside, Richard was stammering through his last line. We can reschedule if you prefer. Liang's reply came crisp and final. No need. I don't invest in unprepared partners. The overhead lights gleamed on Richard's pale, defeated face. Outside, Maya clenched the note in her hand, her eyes darkening with resolve. She finally understood the truth. This collapse wasn't caused by language. It was pride. And in that instant, she knew she had to step in. The air inside the Horizon Grove conference room had thickened, heavy as cold fog. The ticking of the wall clock stretched each second into silence. The projector still cast a blue glow on the screen, but no one was looking anymore. Richard Cole stood frozen before it, his shoulders trembling slightly, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. Across the table, Liang Chen stirred his tea with calm precision, his eyes cutting through every word Richard tried to defend. Beside him, Lin Yue sat poised, phone open to her Mandarin notes. Outside, Maya Jefferson stood quietly in the hallway, holding the crumpled note she'd picked up earlier. The shaky handwriting still carried warmth. Don't help them. They're too arrogant to listen. She knew this single scrap of paper could expose everything. But who would believe a housekeeper? From inside came Richard's strained voice. Mr. Chen, I believe any misunderstanding can be resolved with goodwill. Liang replied in Mandarin, his tone even and detached. Lin Yue translated slowly, trimming away phrases, guiding the meaning toward her own intent. Every twisted word felt like a small knife pressing into Maya's chest. A technician entered quietly, set a laptop on the side table, and forgot to turn off the internal conference camera. A tiny red light blinked in the corner, recording everything. The mistranslations, the tension, the silent power play. No one in the room noticed. Only Maya, watching through the glass, saw the reflection of that red light flickering like a heartbeat. Inside, Richard stumbled to the next slide. As you can see, the local government is very open to... Liang interrupted in Mandarin. Lin Yue smiled faintly. Mr. Chen says your project lacks global vision. Maya's eyes widened. That wasn't what he'd said. The real words were, you don't know how to listen to the people right in front of you. Her hand pressed against the doorframe, breath unsteady. The truth was right there, twisted before her eyes. The vein at her wrist pulsed beneath a thin silver bracelet. In the reflection on the glass, she saw two figures, a man collapsing under the weight of his pride, and a woman on the verge of stepping out from the shadows. She drew a deep breath and tapped lightly on the door. No one heard. Inside, Richard's voice cracked. I'd like to take 5 minutes to prepare the materials again. Ling lifted his gaze, so cold it seemed to lower the room's temperature. No need, he said through Lin Yue. You don't understand me, and you don't understand your own team. Richard turned away, his broken smile barely holding. Maya didn't move. Half her face was caught in the light from the window, half shadow, half brightness. Silence held the hallway like a held breath. Something shifted in her eyes. The fear that had gripped her for so long dissolved, replaced by calm, radiant resolve. The technician came back, reaching to shut off the camera. Maya stopped him, her voice low but steady. Don't! Let it keep recording. He froze, then nodded and slipped away. From inside, Liang's voice rose again. Sometimes the saddest thing is having real talent on your team and never seeing it. Maya tilted her head. He wasn't just talking about the company, and she understood. Her fingers tightened around the note in her pocket. Her eyes were fixed on the glowing Horizon Grove logo through the glass. She drew in one final breath and placed her hand on the door handle. The soft click of the latch sliced through the silence. Everyone in the room turned at once. Light from the hallway spilled across Maya's face. Calm, clear, no longer afraid. No one spoke. The moment hung suspended. Then in perfect Mandarin, her voice rang out, steady and sure. Excuse me, I think I can help. Time stopped. Light from the hallway sliced into the conference room like a blade through heavy air. Dust floated in the beam, glittering like shards of glass. The room had fallen completely silent. Only the faint thud of heartbeats filled the space. Maya Jefferson stood at the doorway, her hands gently clasped in front of her. She wasn't trembling, only calm and composed. The silver bracelet on her wrist caught the cold white light, reflecting it onto the Horizon Grove Resort logo behind Richard Cole. Ling Chen tilted his head, studying the woman before him, his eyes a mix of curiosity and caution. Richard took a half step forward, forcing a polite smile. I'm sorry, this is a private meeting. Maya answered softly, each word clear. I understand, sir, but I think I can clarify what Mr. Chen just said. Then she turned toward the billionaire, and before anyone could react, she continued in flawless Mandarin, her tone steady and natural, as if she'd lived inside the language all her life. The room stopped breathing. Mr. Chen was referring to the city's new zoning regulation, Maya said, her voice calm but firm. That's correct. Portland approved an update last month expanding the commercial and tourism districts for sustainable development. If you'd like, I can cite the exact clause. Ling set his teacup down, the sound crisp against the porcelain saucer. He replied in Mandarin, his tone lower now, testing her. Maya answered without hesitation. She explained every term in the foreign property joint venture clause, even referencing a similar model in Singapore. No one else in the room understood the words, yet understanding rippled through the air. Lin Yue, the official interpreter, blinked once, then lowered her hands from the table. Liang's mouth curved into the faintest smile, the first warmth anyone had seen from him that day. Interesting, he said in English for the first time. I didn't expect a housekeeper to know that. Maya bowed slightly. Before I came here, I studied hotel investment in Southeast Asia. Richard stammered, lost. You work in which department again? Housekeeping, sir. A wave of murmurs rolled across the room. Members of Chen's delegation exchanged glances. One quietly lifted his phone, recording the moment, the camera panning past Richard's frozen face. Maya stepped closer to the table and turned the open laptop toward her. I believe Mr. Chen would prefer real data over slides. Her fingers moved smoothly over the keyboard, opening an internal folder. A file appeared, the original report on zoning and tax incentives, a document she'd once helped prepare, but no one had ever reviewed. Numbers and maps filled the screen. She zoomed in on a section stamped with the city's official seal. Approved, Joint Development Tax Reduction Program. The room's energy shifted. Liang leaned forward, eyes narrowing in focus. Then he looked at Lin Yue. Were you aware of this policy? Lin Yue said nothing. She searched the room for support, but every pair of eyes turned away. One of Chen's associates whispered in Mandarin, we should review our interpreter. Ling's expression cooled to steel as he stared directly at her. Richard tried to laugh, his voice breaking. This is all just a misunderstanding. Maya's voice cut in, gentle but unwavering. Not exactly a misunderstanding. More like a failure to listen. She rotated the laptop toward the audience, revealing the live internal feed that had been recording since the meeting began, showing Lin Yue's mistranslations, her deliberate distortions of Liang Chen's words. The video reflected off the glass walls, every frame a knife of truth. Audio played clearly, Liang's original Mandarin, calm and deliberate. I want to assess the management team's understanding and willingness to cooperate. Lin Yue's translation echoed beside it. He says your American team isn't capable of global partnership. A staff member who had secretly recorded earlier pulled up his own clip. The footage matched perfectly. 2 recordings, 2 angles, 1 truth. Outside the conference room, people were gathering. Receptionists, managers, housekeepers, drawn by the unfolding scene. Public witnessing spread like light through glass. Ling slowly stood, buttoning his jacket. His Mandarin voice carried evenly through the air. It's strange. I came here hoping to find someone who understands me, and I've found that person in the most unexpected place. Richard's mouth opened, but no words came out. Lin Yue's head dropped, her face pale. Maya said nothing more. She simply placed a small handwritten note on the table, the one that had fallen from Lin Yue's pocket. The same line stared back in black ink. Don't help them. The room froze. Liang read it once, then looked up at Richard. His eyes turned cold, his voice low and deliberate. It seems the problem isn't with your lower staff. No one dared to breathe. Outside, a faint wind slipped through the window crack, carrying the scent of white tea. The same fragrance Maya always chose in the mornings. Every gaze turned toward her. In that room where pride and prejudice had just collided, truth stood tall for the first time, and someone whispered under their breath, I think justice just walked into the room. Afternoon light poured over Horizon Grove Resort in a cold metallic sheen. The massive glass panels of the main lobby mirrored the gray sky outside, where staff and guests had gathered near the front desk, whispering about what had just happened upstairs. The rumors spread faster than the wind. The housekeeper spoke Mandarin like a native. Mr. Chen stood up in the middle of the meeting. The sharp echo of leather soles struck the marble floor. Richard Cole stepped out of the elevator, his face tight, his jaw set. 2 department managers trailed behind him, their eyes nervous. Richard stopped in the center of the lobby, straightened his tie, and spoke in a low voice that still carried across the space. Call every staff member from the main building. I'm going to address this embarrassment. The intercom crackled to life. All employees, please report to the main lobby immediately. Within minutes, dozens of people filled the space, crowding near the reception counter and the tall windows overlooking the reflecting pool. The air grew heavy, charged like a storm about to break. Among them stepped Maya Jefferson, still in her housekeeping uniform, her hands faintly dusted with the scent of jasmine from the guest suites. Light from the pool shimmered up her wrist, glinting on her silver bracelet. Richard faced her across the red carpet that stretched between them. Do you even realize what you've done? His voice cut through the air like a blade. I only told the truth, sir, Maya said quietly. No, you humiliated this resort in front of one of Asia's top investors. A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Some people stepped back. Others lifted their phones and began recording. The overhead light caught Richard's face, tracing every line of anger across it. He took half a step closer. You think you had the right to interfere in an executive meeting? Who do you think you are? Maya met his gaze, unflinching. Someone who understood what Mr. Chen was trying to say. The air shifted. Then from across the lobby, the elevator doors opened again. Liang Chen and his delegation stepped out. The crowd parted in silence. Liang stopped beneath the chandelier's light, his dark eyes unreadable. Richard turned quickly, forcing a smile. Mr. Chen, I'm terribly sorry for this disturbance. I'll have her dismissed immediately. No! The shout came, not from Maya, but from a technician holding the laptop that had recorded the internal meeting. Sir, you should see this first. All eyes turned to the screen he lifted. The video played clearly. Footage from the conference room, Lin Yue's mistranslations, and Maya's fluent Mandarin responses to Liang Chen. The blue glow of the screen flickered across every face in the lobby. Richard snatched the laptop and slammed it shut. You dare show internal footage in public? He barked. The technician stepped back, but someone had already captured the moment on their phone. The murmurs grew louder. A waiter whispered, I saw everything. He's hiding it. Maya stood still. The scent of white tea drifted faintly through the air. The same she used every morning. Liang hadn't spoken yet, but his eyes stayed on her. The entire room seemed to slow around that stare. The hum of the air conditioner, the tap of heels, the trickle of water outside, all paused, waiting. Then, desperate, Richard tried to pivot. He faced Liang with a strained smile. "Mr. Chen, she's new. She may have misunderstood your words. We'll make sure—" "No," Liang interrupted, his voice low and firm. "She understood perfectly." The room exploded in silence, the kind that comes when no one dares to breathe. Ling walked forward, each step echoing on the marble. "I'll ask you one thing," he said in Mandarin, his tone deep and precise. "Why help people who refuse to see you?" Maya lowered her head slightly, fingers brushing her bracelet. "Because silence is a form of consent, too." Ling paused for half a heartbeat, then turned to the crowd and switched to English. "She understands better than any of you what that truly means." Richard opened his mouth to respond, but another light flared behind him. A phone screen. The voice of Emma, the head of housekeeping, rang out from the back of the lobby, her phone streaming live to the resort's internal channel. "The whole resort's watching, Richard." A wave of gas rippled through the crowd as everyone raised their phones. Dozens of lenses and flashes filled the air, turning the center of the lobby into a storm of white light. Richard's voice came out low, hard as metal. "Fine. If you want an audience, then tell everyone who you really are." Maya lifted her head, light reflected in her eyes. No fear left, no hesitation. She drew a steady breath and spoke clearly enough for every corner of the room to hear. "My name is Maya Jefferson. I hold a master's degree in linguistics and international business from the National University of Singapore. I've worked on trade cooperation research for the government, and for the last 4 years, I've been cleaning your rooms." The crowd broke into a wave of gasps and murmurs. Some stared open-mouthed. Others blinked back tears. Liang Chen tilted his head slightly, a faint, knowing smile touching his lips. Richard stepped back. The chandelier above him flickered as he whispered, "No one will believe you." "Maybe not," Maya said softly. She turned toward the giant monitor by the reception desk, where the CCTV feed replayed the moment he'd ordered her thrown out of the lobby earlier that morning. The lobby lights dimmed as the image froze mid-frame. Richard's hand pointed at her, his face twisted with anger. No one spoke. The silence pressed tight. Then a calm, steady male voice broke through, cold and final as a judge's gavel. "Perhaps," it said, "we should review the full recording before deciding who leaves this place." Every eye turned toward the source. Liang Chen still stood beneath the chandelier, one hand resting on the counter, a small USB drive gleaming between his fingers, catching the light like a blade of silver. The evidence had just arrived. The lobby of Horizon Grove Resort shifted to a cold white hue, light reflecting off the marble floor like a sheet of thin ice. Every eye turned toward the reception desk, where Liang Chen had placed a small silver USB drive. A single drop of water fell from someone's glass and shattered on the floor, the sound echoing louder in the heavy silence. The technician plugged the device into the giant screen hanging above the lobby. Blue light flickered. Then the video began to play. The footage came straight from the security cameras, clear, untouched. On the screen, Richard Cole stood in the conference room, his voice sharp through the microphone. "Get her out of the lobby. Now. I don't want my guests seeing her." The sound rolled through the ceiling speakers, freezing the air. In the video, Maya Jefferson bent down to pick up the towel, her hands trembling slightly as Liang Chen and his team passed by. No one said a word, but Liang's expression, curious at first, then quietly disappointed, said everything. A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd. Someone gasped. A housekeeping worker covered her mouth. The footage shifted, showing Lin Yue mistranslating during the meeting and cutting key phrases, while Maya stood outside the doorway, listening to every word in silence. Each frame pierced through the lies like a needle through silk. When the video ended, Liang turned to Richard, his tone steady and grave. "You told me this hotel valued human dignity. I've just seen the opposite." Richard stood frozen, color draining from his face. "Mr. Chen, please, this is all a misunderstanding." "No," Liang said coldly. "It's the truth. The camera doesn't lie." The words fell like a final verdict. The lobby went utterly still. Only the faint wind slipped through the glass, lifting a menu from the bar counter and sending it spinning through the air before it landed softly at Maya's feet. Liang faced the crowd, his voice resonating through the intercom. In every organization, justice isn't defined by title. It's shown by how we treat the weakest among us. For a long moment, no one moved. Then a single pair of hands began to clap, soft but steady, followed by dozens more. Richard clenched his jaw, trying to regain control. Mr. Chen, as an investor, I'm sure we can... Liang didn't respond. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few keys, and looked up. I've just emailed the executive board, he said calmly. I'll move forward with the Horizon Grove investment, but only if Ms. Jefferson becomes the director of international relations. And you, Richard, will resign today. The lobby erupted. Gasps, whispers, a few tears. Housekeeping staff hugged each other, stunned and emotional. Maya stepped back slightly, her heartbeat loud in her chest. Richard stared at Liang, eyes red. You can't... Liang cut him off, voice deep and steady. Justice doesn't ask for permission. The words struck like a hammer. Richard looked around, seeing the faces of his staff, no longer fearful, no longer deferential, just awake. Maya lowered her head. I don't want him to lose his job, she said softly. I only want no one else to be treated the way I was. Liang nodded once. That's exactly why you deserve to lead. He turned to the technician. Play the last part again. The screen showed Maya at the conference room door, hand on the handle, breathing deeply before stepping inside. Liang smiled faintly. That's when justice began. The moment someone stopped being afraid. Applause erupted again, louder this time, echoing through the lobby. Staff began live streaming to the rest of the resort. Comments flooded in. She's a real hero. I'm crying. Justice lives here. Richard said nothing. He unpinned his name badge and set it on the counter. The metallic sound rang sharp and final. No one clapped. Liang's gaze followed him, not angry, just saddened by a man lost to his own pride. Maya stood quietly, neither triumphant nor bitter. She only felt something return to the air. Respect. Liang turned to her and extended his hand. Miss Jefferson, call me Liang. I'd like to work with you on the Hidden Voices Initiative, a program to make sure every employee is heard. Maya shook his hand as light from the reflecting pool spilled through the glass, wrapping them both in silver. The crowd broke into tears and cheers, calling her name. Maya! Maya! Their voices rising together like summer rain. Phone cameras swirled across the scene, catching Richard's silhouette fading into the crowd while Maya stood bathed in light, lifted by the eyes of her colleagues. Sunlight streamed through the glass, turning her hair into a halo of silver. No music, no speeches, just light, brilliant, strong, and still. Justice was here, quiet but blinding. The next morning, a fine mist of rain drifted over Horizon Grove Resort, turning the green lawns into a hazy mirror of silver light. The front gate stood open as local reporters lined the entrance. On the staff's phones, headlines glowed across their screens. Billionaire Liang Chen chooses Horizon Grove after scandal. One woman changed the game. Behind the glass walls of the empty lobby, Richard Cole sat alone. In front of him lay his signed resignation letter, the handwriting shaky but neat. Beside it sat his metal nameplate, now reflecting only his pale, weary face. The lobby that had once buzzed with voices was silent, filled only with the soft rhythm of rain tapping against the skylight. The doors opened automatically. Maya Jefferson walked in. She no longer wore her housekeeping uniform but a light gray blazer, with her hair tied neatly back and a folder in her hand. Light reflected off the glass behind her, surrounding her in a quiet glow. The same light Richard had once found harsh, but now it felt strangely comforting. He started to stand, then stopped. I suppose you came to see the old man walk out. Maya sat across from him, her voice soft as breath. No, I came to say thank you. His brow furrowed. Thank you? For being humiliated? She smiled faintly. If not for yesterday, I might never have found the courage to stand up. He looked at her for a long moment, eyes unfocused. You think I'm a terrible man? No, she said gently. Just someone who didn't see. The words fell between them like a raindrop on glass. Light, but resonant. Richard nodded slightly, his shoulders sinking. He picked up the metal nameplate and placed it in her hand. Maybe it belongs to someone else now. Maya looked down. In the reflection of the steel, her own face appeared, calm and clear. She stood and walked out. As the doors closed behind her, the sound of rain softened into a steady, soothing rhythm, like a heartbeat. Richard stayed for a while, then slowly removed his tie and folded it neatly. A young housekeeper passed by. He said quietly, "Take your chance when it comes." The young man smiled, not fully understanding, but Richard's gaze followed him with something close to peace. Weeks later, Horizon Grove had changed. The frame photos lining the halls now showed real employees instead of stock models. In the main conference room hung a small plaque, Hidden Voices Initiative. Everyone has a story worth hearing. On the 10th floor, Maya sat by her office window overlooking the misty forest. On her desk was a formal partnership invitation, a new joint project between Horizon Grove and Liang Chen's corporation, naming her as the director of coordination. Beside it lay a handwritten note in Mandarin. Maya, justice doesn't come from a title, but from integrity and silence. See you in Singapore, where those who listen will build something great. Liang. She reread it, then smiled. On her wrist, the old silver bracelet shimmered in the morning light, the tiny scratch from her first day still there, but now it looked like a thread of light. That afternoon, Maya held the first meeting for the Hidden Voices program. The room was full of security guards, cooks, gardeners, and front desk staff. Each person had a card labeled, "My Hidden Strength," what I'm good at but no one knows. Maya stepped to the front, her voice warm and steady. "I used to believe that if I stayed quiet and worked hard, someone would notice me. But sometimes justice needs a voice. Even a small one can move a whole room." Heads lifted across the room. Faces that had long looked down in exhaustion now filled with light. Emma, the head of housekeeping, walked up and handed Maya a neatly folded white towel. "I think you'll need this," she said. "Not to clean floors anymore, but to wipe the dust from glass, so it reflects who we really are." Maya took it, her eyes glistening. Applause rose, warm and strong. The doors opened, and the olden sunset streamed in. In that glow, Liang Chen appeared, standing at the doorway with a smile. He said nothing, only nodded, then turned away, leaving a beam of light stretching across the room behind him. Evening settled. The lake behind the resort lay still as glass. Maya stood by the railing, holding her silver bracelet in her palm, turning it until the last light of day shimmered across its curve, reflecting her face at her. No longer the invisible girl in a uniform. A young technician, the same one who'd messaged her during the meeting, approached and held out the silver USB that had recorded it all. "I thought you should keep it. It's part of our history." Maya smiled. "No, give it to training. Let others learn not to stay silent." He nodded, his eyes bright. Night fell. The resort was peaceful, the wind whispering through the pines. In her office, Maya turned off the light and stepped onto the balcony. Across the lake, Portland's city lights shimmered gold on the water. She listened to the breeze. It sounded almost like someone whispering. Under the moonlight, her bracelet glowed one last time. She clenched her hand gently and smiled. The smile of someone who knew every trial had led her home to herself. A soft knock came at the door. It was Emma, holding a tray with white tea and jasmine blossoms. "A cup of tea for your first night as director." Maya smiled. White tea, the taste of freedom. They sat together in silence. The moonlight spilled across the table, two bands of light crossing, like justice and kindness intertwining. The next morning, the glass doors of the grand lobby opened wide to the sunrise. Liang Chen left Portland, glancing back at the building glowing in early light. On the top floor, Maya opened the curtains, letting sunlight flood the room. The white towel Emma had given her hung on the window frame, swaying gently, a symbol of clarity and new beginnings. From the lounge below came the faint notes of a piano, slow, warm, like the breath of morning. On her desk, a new silver nameplate gleamed, Maya Jefferson, Director of International Relations. Beside it sat Richard Cole's old nameplate, turned face down, a quiet period at the end of a long story. The imaginary camera pulled back, past the glass, past the lake, rising above Portland's bright skyline. The reflection of the resort shimmered across the water, fading slowly into the sky. A deep, calm voice spoke, like a final thought carried on the wind. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it only whispers, in how we treat the person no one else sees. Maya, eyes closed, her face bathed in morning light, a peaceful smile on her lips.